From here, Plenary Session, the Asia-Pacific Synergies Report, a regional action program translating regional insights into global and local implementation will start. First of all, United Secretary General of the UN, Executive Secretary, United Nations ESCAP, Armida Al-Shabana will give a keynote speech on online video.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Professor Takeuchi Kazuhiko, President of IGES, for the kind invitation to address the 18th ISAP Forum under the theme Strengthening Local Resilience to Planetary Crisis, Scaling Up Synergistic Solutions. Across our region and the world, the compounding pressure of climate change are increasing, and the triple planetary crisis is increasingly experienced locally. The urgency is sharpened by the emerging so-called Super El Nino. The WMO warns that developing El Nino conditions in 2026 are set to heavily influence global temperature and rainfall patterns and heighten extreme weather risks in the months ahead. For Asia and the Pacific, this means elevated risk to agriculture, water management, energy systems, and public health. Many countries have already experienced severe, record-breaking heat waves in 2026. In a warming climate, the associated impacts are further amplified. Our Asia-Pacific Disaster Report 2026, Rising Heat, Rising Risk documents cascading impacts across infrastructure, water and energy systems, public health, labor productivity, livelihoods, and vulnerable groups. The lesson is clear. Siloed approaches cannot address interconnected crises. We must embrace synergistic solutions designed to deliver multiple benefits simultaneously. In this context, I would like to highlight some key priorities. First one is that we must mainstream heat and compound risk resilience in local development planning. Local and subnational authorities sit at the intersection of global crisis and community needs. They require clear multi-level governance arrangement, adequate resources, and the capacity to integrate climate resilience into local development planning. Secondly, we must scale up integrated local solutions through finance, data and regional cooperation, nature-based solutions, heat health warning systems, inclusive social protection, and green cooling corridors are concrete examples of how synergistic approaches generate multiple benefits. Third, in a year of heightened El Nino-related risk, we must set a new milestone for enhancing local resilience to planetary crisis through anticipatory action, nature-based and low-carbon urban solutions, and inclusive social protection in a synergistic way. Distinguished participants, we were pleased to collaborate closely with IGES to prepare the Asia-Pacific Synergy Report, which analyzes regional context of synergistic action and features best practice cases of synergistic solutions from our region. This collaboration enabled ESCAP to adopt the Regional Program of Action on Advancing Synergies for Sustainable Development in Asia-Pacific for 2026-2030 at the 9th session of the Committee on Environment and Development held on from 1st and 3rd of July. The Regional Program of Action encompasses 4 thematic pillars, namely climate change, biodiversity and nature-positive development, pollution and the circular economy, and cities and resilience, as well as enablers underpinning the thematic pillars, strengthening governance, financing, and data system. On cities and resilience, the Regional Program of Action calls for integrating approaches aimed at sustainable, low emission, and climate resilient urban development. It calls for building the capacities of local and subnational authorities, aligning urban growth with available natural resources, and supporting the development of urban nature-based solutions. These are not aspirational goals. They are actionable commitments backed by regional consensus. This is a concrete example of translating regional insights into global and local implementation. The Asia-Pacific region has ingenuity, diversity, and economic power to serve as a laboratory for the world. The synergistic solutions analyzed and recommended in the report demonstrate that tackling multiple crises at once is not only possible, but more effective and efficient than piecemeal responses. I wish to express my sincere hope that IGES and our partners will continue to collaborate with UNESCAP in implementing the actions contained in the Regional Program of Action. The challenges before us are immense, which require us to build regional solidarity to better utilize our resources and expertise. I wish you all fruitful and impactful discussions throughout this forum as we work together to build a resilient, sustainable, and equitable Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Next, we'll show a short introductory video on the Asia-Pacific Synergy Report, which was just mentioned by Ms. Alisavana.
Home to nearly 5 billion people, 60% of the world's population, Asia and the Pacific is a region of extraordinary dynamism, diversity, and possibility. From the peaks of the Himalayas to the coral reefs of the Pacific, from megacities to small island states, this region holds some of the planet's most valuable natural and human resources. But the region is at a decisive moment. Progress on the SDGs has slowed, and Asia and the Pacific is currently not on track to achieve them, especially those related to the environment. The triple planetary crisis, climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, is intensifying. 70% of global air pollution-related deaths occur here. Climate change is already reshaping livelihoods, widening inequality, and placing the greatest burdens on those with the least. Fragmented responses have not been enough. Addressing climate, biodiversity, pollution, and development in isolation leaves critical opportunities untapped. But these interconnected crises point to an interconnected solution. When we address challenges together, we can generate outcomes greater than the sum of their parts. This is the power of synergies. Synergies come from intentional alignment of policies, finance, data, and governance to deliver multiple benefits for people, nature, and climate. The Asia-Pacific Synergies Report, produced by the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, the United Nations Environment Programme, and the Asian Development Bank, with the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies as Secretariat, draws on 36 case studies and over 150 examples from across the region. It identifies 4 transformation pathways. First, health-centered climate action, linking climate solutions to cleaner air, safer temperatures, and more resilient food systems. Second, nature-positive nexus approaches, managing the connections between food, water, climate, and biodiversity to protect ecosystems and support livelihoods. Third, circular economy approaches, reducing pollution through resource efficiency and circular systems across key sectors. And fourth, cities as delivery platforms. More than half the population of Asia and the Pacific live in urban areas, where integrated planning across transport, energy, water, and housing turns national ambition into local impact. Delivering synergies requires an enabling environment, aligned finance, integrated data systems, and governance that moves from coordination to implementation. It also requires regional cooperation to share knowledge, align approaches, and scale solutions. The region can turn interconnected crises into opportunities for transformation. This report provides a roadmap for that transformation. The time to act is now.
From here, we'd like to move to the panel discussion. I'd like to welcome panel discussants to the stage. First, I'd like to introduce the discussants. Professor, Hong Kong University, Science and Technology, Professor Kejon Zhang. Team Leader, Takeda Minoru, Energy and Division for Sustainable Development Goals. Chief Executive Officer of the Environmental Management Department, Hyogo Prefecture, Uenishi Kotoko. Program Director of IGES, Mr. Professor Eric Zussman. The facilitator will be taken care of by Dr. Eric Zussman.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here in Hyogo Prefecture, and it's an honor to be speaking to you today about the Synergies report that we have recently completed along with many different partners. I will offer a brief framing presentation on the report, and then we'll go into a few interventions from our colleagues here, and then gradually move into a panel discussion. What I would like to do to start off with is underline the point that this Synergies report was very much a synergistic effort. It actually involved the collaboration with more than 50 different authors and 30 different reviewers across the region. And one of the things that we were trying to do collectively is tackle a huge problem that faces not only Asia Pacific, but much of the world. And that problem is that the progress on the Sustainable Development Goals is going much slower than we had hoped and much slower than we had wanted. This figure right here gives us an illustration of this unfortunate slow progress. And what it underlines is if we continue along the current trajectory, we're more likely to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2060 than the originally planned 2030. We're about 30 years behind given the current trajectory. So one of the big questions that the authors of this report were trying to address is how can we accelerate progress? And the answer to that question is summarized by this term, synergies. As was already mentioned, when we talk about synergies, what we're really trying to underline here, and I'm going to use a metaphor that I heard in New York recently, is when, sometimes when you go bowling, you have one bowling ball, but you're trying to knock down multiple pins at the same time. And what we see is this concept of synergies where we're trying to achieve more with less has appeared pretty frequently in literature on how do we work on the SDGs or how do we work on climate change and biodiversity and pollution control. So this figure right here shows the number of articles that have been published on synergies and climate change over the past 10 years. And you can see the upward trajectory there, moving up until 2025. But another thing that we want to try to do in this report was not just take this sort of academic trend and say that's important, but also try to understand how we can translate that into concrete actions on the ground. And so, as has already been mentioned, one of the unique features of this Synergies report is that it has over 36 or approximately 36 case studies. And those case studies are taken from 29 different countries, covering 90% of the Asia-Pacific population. In addition to the case studies that are in the report itself, there's almost 150 additional case studies that we've accrued, and those can be found on the IGES website, as well as they're going to be transferred over to the Ministry of Environment website. And one of the key things that these case studies demonstrate is how actual people are working to try to achieve multiple objectives at the same time. And I know it's difficult to see from the back right there, but we're very grateful to our colleagues from Hyogo because, for instance, one of the case studies focuses on future leaders and youth engagement in Hyogo, and thinking and animating some discussions among the young people on how we can pursue multiple objectives on the ground here in the province that we're in today. And so I invite you to look at some of these case studies, and then hopefully this will also motivate you to think of other ways that you can concretely bring life to the concept of synergies. Now, another thing that the report does is it doesn't just stop short of saying, okay, we need to translate research into action, but we also need what I would call, sometimes this is called a theory of change, but a bigger argument about how do we make synergies the sort of core principle of everything that we do when it comes to addressing climate change, biodiversity, and pollution control. And so in the report, we highlight 4 different entry points or pathways which can be used to try to inform how policymakers pursue synergies. This includes everything from health-centered climate action to focusing on nature-positive futures, to focusing on the circular economy, which is like the next generation of how we deal with 3R issues, to focusing on cities as urban delivery platforms. So we say that these 4 entry points, if I'm a policymaker sitting, for instance, in Hyogo, and I want to think about how do I actually take this forward. Of course, I need concrete action on the ground, but these 4 entry points give us some policy pathways that we can pursue. And the other core piece of this is if those pathways are going to be implemented effectively, we also need what we call means of implementation, or sometimes the enabling environment. And this refers to things like finance. So we need to have financial structures that motivate businesses and public sector to actively invest in synergies or projects and programs with multiple objectives. So we need finance. We also need data and tools. Okay, so we need to make sure that when we're identifying synergies, we're also trying to quantify or systematically assess them so that policymakers and citizens on the ground can actually see the visibility of those synergies. So data and tools. And third is governance. We need new forms of governance that bring in multiple agencies and multiple parts of society. We sometimes call this whole of government and whole of society approaches. And this, once again, is important to make sure that the different organizations within government or different elements of society are coming together to actively implement things like health-centered climate actions. And last but not least, especially when it comes to scaling things up, we need regional cooperation and support from regional entities like the Asian Development Bank or UNESCAP or UNEP. We also need this at the global level too, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. So once again, in order to make sure that synergies becomes a core operating principle, we need these 4 pathways, and we also need these enabling reforms, and they need to be anchored in some case studies which we provide in this report. And I'm just going to touch briefly upon how the report is organized, just to suggest that we have different chapters on these different elements. So for instance, there's a chapter on advancing the circular economy, and we show different approaches even within the circular economy that are consistent with synergies and the different SDGs that we'll achieve. We also have a chapter on, for instance, cities. And when we talk about cities, we also demonstrate how different cities are actively taking forward the idea of synergies. And for instance, just to highlight that this is not only something that's alive and well in Hyogo, but for instance, in the Synergies case, we talk a lot about the circular economy and the CES approach, Regional Circular Ecological Sphere approach, which is being actively implemented in Sado Island. We also have cases, for instance, even in northern Japan, Aomori Prefecture and the Hachinohe city. And then last but not least, in terms of some of the thematic chapters, we have this chapter on governance. And the governance chapter is interesting because it really starts to talk about how do we move from some experimentation on the ground, like I was talking in the case of some of the youth engagement in Hyogo, but how do we actually institutionalize that and move to higher levels of impact? And so we outline different types of institutional arrangements from experimentation to full-on strengthening institutional incentives for cooperation that will help achieve bigger impacts, not only in places, for instance, like Hyogo, but throughout Japan or throughout all of Asia. So these just gives you sort of a taste and flavor for the report. But what I would do is I would suggest that you go to our website. You can find it there and download it there. You can also come talk to me or my other colleagues. We have postcards where you can get the URL. And I'll close with this just sort of brief set of 6 recommendations. And those 6 recommendations really focus on how do we move forward with some of the key parts of the report. And they range from everything like using cities as delivery platforms to demonstrate synergies to the importance of regional cooperation, once again, to make sure that we upscale synergies. So this just gives you a bit of a taste of what the report is doing. And then I would like to sort of conclude my presentation there. And then I'm going to now transition over to some of our other colleagues who will help us to share different insights on other parts of the report or how we can make the report more relevant at the global level or the local level. So thank you very much. Okay, so to move to the next part of our discussion today, I'd like to turn the virtual microphone and podium over to my colleague, Zhang Kejun. Professor Zhang is a professor at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. He's a longtime collaborator, and he was a strong contributor to the climate change chapter in this report. So Professor Zhang, I'd like to ask you to reflect a little bit, especially on how you see synergies working in the climate space and how you saw some of the arguments develop in the climate change chapter, climate and health chapter for the report. Over to you, Zhang Laoshi.
Thank you, Eric. And also thanks a lot of colleagues from IGES and from Japan. You make such kind of thing happen. I think this is not only a report. It's a call for make early action. We have to do something. I'm also so happy to work together with many colleagues from Asia and make such kind of thing happen. And the first thing I want to mention about the changing is so fast. And the temperature rising, if you look at 2024, the temperature is about 1.5 degree. 2025 is 1.48 degree. And this year, for the first 6 months, again, higher than 1.5 degree. So it's a very big possibility that the average temperature increase is 3 years already higher than 1.5 degree. What happened? We set up a target for 2100, but now that we are suffering for such kind of rapid temperature increase. We see a lot of damage from that. 2 months ago, 50 cities in the world, the hottest city in the world is all in India. Every day, many people died. And after that, we heard the really high temperature in Europe. And 20 days ago in China, collapse of a reservoir and also 10 days later, there's a mountain collapse, and many people killed. Everything is happening every day today. We are getting to a world we suffer such kind of damage and loss, and really pity. Maybe one of them is our family members. We have to fight for the 1.5 degree, and fighting, as Eric mentioned about, if we, even for the 17 SDGs, based on the current trend, we just finished that by 2060. Oh my God, I don't know what happened for that. That's the original design for 2030. When they designed such kind of target in 2015, they designed that for reasons. They designed that for we can't reach that. So what happened for that? So that's, again, I think this report, I'm so happy to join that one. This is a call for rapid, today's action. We must move so fast. And second point is Asia is very unique. We have really developed countries like Japan, Korea, Singapore. We also have very big countries like China, India. We also have very diverse economic development pattern, and even for the religion issues. It's very diverse Asia, and we make this very stable development. So many things happen. If Asia can do something, I don't worry about the world. Yesterday, we are in ADB. Again, we talk about Japan, Korea, China, how to work together with many poor countries or developed countries in Asia, how to help them to make a certain kind of transition rapidly happen. This weekend, we are going to Nepal. Why? Because in 2025, the electric car penetration rate in Nepal is 74%, one of the highest in the world. They can go to the leapfrog, and they can go ahead with their rapid changing, not only for zero carbon, but also for so many things for the 17 SDGs together. Something is happening. If Japan, China, Korea, and Singapore, some leading countries can work together with so many different countries in Asia, we can take Asia to be one of the model. Number three, I like this report very much. Synergy. That means we put so many things together. We think all the 17 SDGs, now based on our study, energy transition is not only for zero carbon. It can contribute to all 17 SDGs together. If Eric mentioned about from this report, the business scenario go to 2060 to implement all the 17 SDGs, let's make a faster moving for that one. This is our common future. So based on this report, by chapter, we can get the information how to move. If we don't move, what happened? I think it's really disaster. Number four, we are still one family. Even something happened, a little bit fighting or disagreement with each other, but fundamentally, we should design a beautiful future for our children, our children's children. That's my generation I have to do. Otherwise, I feel myself very pity. I'm a kind of failure to do such kind of thing. We don't have a beautiful world in the future. So we are talking about whether we can have a beautiful world together. I think such kind of important report, by also during the process to prepare the report, I have a lot of discussion with colleagues from IGES and also colleagues from all over the Asia countries. It's a really interesting process to make such kind of thing happen. All the process to prepare the report could be also the process to work together to make the synergy, SDG, 17 SDGs and zero carbon happen in the coming future. Technology is ready. And also the only way is how to make that happen. Money is out there. And how to implement such kind of strategy with the recommendation from this report. That's something we should figure out after this report released. The next phase, I think we should work together more with a colleague from IGES and also other colleague from Japan, together with a colleague from Asia. Yes, what's the implementation issue should be. The minister level already have the meeting there. I think there are so many things happen well soon in Asia. This is our homework for next time we should do it together. The last point I want to mention about, yes, it's really the timing. Everything is there. Let's be a big family. And think about our children, our children's children, what's our future. I think that next 5 years is really crucial. We have to make a very big move in the next 5 years. And this original design for the 17 SDGs, let's make that happen. So not only myself, I'm a modeler. I'm doing the modeling, thinking about the future energy transition pathway and also economic transition pathway. Think about the future of Japan, Korea, China, India, and also think about the future of Nepal, Laos, Cambodia, so many different countries here. We can work together. I have strong confidence on that. The remaining things, let's work together and move. Okay, thank you, Eric. I just stop here. This is my fundamental idea. I do want to join there in person, but yesterday I was in ADB and just arrived Guangzhou is early morning. So, but I promise I will go to Japan in October and to meet so many old friends there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor John. It's really good to see you from Guangzhou, and I'm glad you got back safely from Manila. I really wanted just to underline a few quick points. I think this idea of sort of collective action and trying to envisage this as a charge for, pulling together, as you use the one big family, is really important. And I think we've done that, from a researcher's perspective, and now we also need to try to do that from a policymaker's perspective, try to move some of these concepts off the paper and onto the ground. And I think another thing that you highlighted, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more, is, especially when we talk about why we need synergies, is just the way that we're feeling the temperatures and the changes in the environment these days. I was talking to my colleague, Otsuka-san, as I was walking over here, and the temperature changes have been tangible, and, you feel it on your skin, you feel it in your body. And one of the only ways to sort of address these things is by trying to achieve multiple objectives. I think as we try to work together, it's also important to put the local on it. We'll get to that in a little bit more, but for right now, I'm going to turn the intervention and the podium over to our colleague, Minoru Takada. And Takada-san is a team leader of energies of SDGs, and he's also one of the people who's been at the forefront of this work on SDGs and climate synergies, leading the efforts to make sure we've had multiple reports at the global level, and also the 7th Synergy Conference, most recently in Bangkok. So I'd like to turn it over to Takada-san to give us some insights.
Thank you very much. I'm not supposed to speak in English, right?
So, congratulations. This is the first time that ISAP is conducted here in Kobe. And Takeda Sensei, thank you very much for giving me lots of ideas. I've been working in the UN for the last 30 years. What do you think the UN is doing? I receive this kind of questions from my family and children, and that perplexes me. What's the UN doing? Eric, what do you think what the UN is doing?
それで私言うんですけど、
So I often say UN employees work so that the world will get better. Then everyone say, why are you talking always about ideals? But when I come to think about it, what I'm doing, we work on life-related things, poverty, discrepancy, gender, public health, education, labor, work, climate change, climate, of course, and environment, of course. We are doing various things. Also, we are doing security, national security. But long-term, short-term, ideal and real actions, including all that, we try to do something that's fruitful. I think that is SDGs. SDGs are not a list of ideals. What the world, people in the world, in the big UN General Assembly for 3 years, we've thought and thought and thought about the ideal of the world by controlling our own profits and what we really want. We talked and talked and talked and came up with SDGs. Eric just presented about the real SDGs, although it has to improve like this, but status quo is quite plateauing. I think we are about 30% level, which means our human beings, we are only exerting 30% of our own potentials. SDGs have long-term, short-term ideals. All these are included in SDGs, and that's our agenda. In order to proceed with them, we believe that that would improve our own lives. So we have lots more left to do. 10 years since we've been undertaking SDGs. What's most important lesson from that is that we have to combine, which is called synergy. IGES made this Asia Pacific version of synergy. I think it would be fruitful for us and highly effective. There are 17 goals, 195 targets, and other indicators. And including all that, it is very vast to think of with but thinking about our own lives and profits and our wishes and what we can really do. And they came up with real case studies and tried to share them. And by repeating all that, that's the only way for us to activate our potentials we have as humans. The UN exists because of that. The UN was formed after World Wars, and many people wondered how to rebuild their countries and created the UN. SDGs, there are 193 countries. They thought about ideals and status quo, long-term plans as well as short-term plans, and came up with these SDGs. By having SDG goals, although we have only succeeded 30%, but that means we have done 30%. So 70% to go. By having 1 step, 2 step, 3 steps, I think we'll be able to carry out even more of human potentials. That would be our ideal for 2030. SDGs won't be failure if we can't complete 100%, because our human potentials are much higher than what we can actively carry out. And by writing that down, and we are improving the world as well as our countries. That is the main essence of SDGs. And the meaning of it, synergy, by practicing it and what we can carry out, and we document it. That is the most important thing for us Japanese. When you go to the UN, what do you think they think of Japan as a country? They expect a lot from us. 80 years ago, when the UN was founded, the big powers supported the world. But recently, the pictures changed. And among that, what kind of people, what kind of countries should we ask for help? What kind of people will lead the world? The world is looking for leaders, and they are highly expecting a lot from Japan. It is because Japan has good ethics. Japanese people are professional people with good ethical thinking. Country level, municipally, regional level, toward the big goal, everyone has this energy to do something together. And that motivation cannot be found everywhere. And how can Japanese people act together like that? And people wrote that in this booklet, and we are able to share our secrets. And I think government as well as Yokohama, Kobe, Kanagawa Prefecture all working together, and I just collected all that and tried to share that to all over the world. This is a contribution not only to Japan but to the world. Japan, I think we can be confident. It's not because I'm Japanese that I'm saying this. I truly believe in it. We've got lots of good things and we need to share them and improve the society. Good things are not necessary for the goal to come true. We have an understanding of balancing the real status quo and the ideal. And Japan has a lot of them. So I hope you will believe in it and trust in us. And please share your experiences and expertise with us, with the UN. And I'm repeating myself again, we highly expect a lot from Japan. So thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you so much, Takada-san, for sharing this really interesting insight and trying to communicate to our colleagues and friends here in the audience what it's like to, be in the UN and operate in the UN, and also what are the expectations for Japan from UN. One small insight here is I think I've met you probably 5 or 6 times, but this is the first time I've seen you speak Japanese. And I want to just say Takada-san's Japanese is very good. Beyond that, though, I think I've lived in Japan now for almost 20 years, and I have a daughter who's basically Hafu, and she embodies many of the spirits and many of the ideas that you've expressed here. I think, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but many of us here in the room here have a synergy story that needs to be shared. And we started to collect this in this report, but I think the hope is that much more of these synergy stories will be disseminated outward because of reports like this and because of channels that we're creating now to try to demonstrate how Japan is operationalizing this concept. So thank you so much. I would like to now turn it over to another colleague, Kotoko Yonishi. And Yonishi-san is the Chief Section Officer of Environment Management Department at Hyogo Prefecture. As was already mentioned, this is the first time we're doing ISAP in Hyogo, but it's a distinct pleasure to be here today. And I'd like to hear some of Yonishi-san's insights and inputs. I believe she's going to share a presentation. Yonishi-san, over to you.
I am Uenishi, the Chief Executive Officer of the Environment and Management Department, Hyogo Prefecture. And as was mentioned by the Vice Governor at the beginning, thank you very much for having this ISAP here in Hyogo Prefecture. And the basic environment policy of Hyogo Prefecture was introduced by the Vice Governor at the beginning. And we have 3 measures, and the maximizing the synergies of the policies is the way to solve the issues by achieving the synergies from the various measures. And I think this matches this the theme of this forum of the synergy approach. And today, I'd like to introduce an initiative from Hyogo Prefecture, how we are carrying out the project with synergies. So first one is the so-called Hokusetsu Satoyama Regional Circular and Ecological Sphere. A regional circular and ecological sphere is an approach that encourages communities to take another look at the resources they already have, make the best use of those resources, and improve the environment, the economy, and society together by building networks that share crucial local resources. And they are going to establish a network in which they support each other. And in the Hokusetsu region in eastern Hyogo Prefecture, local communities are working to pass on the benefits of Satoyama landscapes to future generations while supporting sustainable development of local livelihoods, the economy, and environment. For many years, the rich natural environment of the Hokusetsu Satoyama has been maintained through continuous care by local people. However, in recent years, aging and population decline have led to the deterioration of those landscapes, making it a major challenge to preserve their value to the future generations. And one important solution is the use of the woody biomass. Wood produced through Satoyama restoration and conservation activities can be used as a renewable energy source, creating new value from the very activities that protect those landscapes. At the same time, producing energy from local resources helps reduce carbon emissions and supports decarbonization. Rather than treating Satoyama conservation and the transition to clean energy as separate issues, we believe they should be pursued together, making the best use of local resources. So what you can find in the slide is the cutting and the flow to the biomass molar. The bottom ones, after the cutting of the trees, where you replanted the trees to generate the Satoyama again. And next is about the sustainable fashion. In Hyogo Prefecture, we are working with our residents to build a more sustainable society by focusing on everyday aspects of clothing, food, and housing. Among these, we have identified plastics, food, and clothing as key priority areas. And today, I'd like to introduce you one of these priority initiatives, the promotion of sustainable fashion. The goal of this initiative is to shift away from a society based on mass ordering, mass production, mass consumption, and mass disposal of clothing toward one based on appropriate production and consumption with the reuse and recycling at its core. In particular, we are promoting the reuse and recycling of synthetic fibers, which are widely used in clothing, to make better use of the resources and encourage sustainable fashion as a new lifestyle. One example is the Sportwear Reborn project, carried out in partnership with local professional sport teams. So unwanted sportwear is collected at the stadiums and arenas and then recycled back into new textile products through closed-loop recycling. We are also working with businesses through the Workwear Reborn project, as well as conducting initiatives such as the Ekoromo campaign in Toyoka, which texts effective ways to collect used clothing for reuse. These projects bring together a wide range of partners and promote the change of behavior of the residents. And the picture here is the one held in May, an occasion of the football game. And before that, we had the event to collect the used sportwears. Next page, please. And the third one is the comprehensive approach to environmental learning and education. So generation of the young generation's nurturing is very important. So the first one, we have the youth development initiatives, which is called Hyogo High School Environmental Future Leaders Project. This project is designed for the high school students who are interested in environmental issues but are unaware how they can make a difference. So its goal is to develop a next generation of leaders who can understand environmental challenges from scientific and local perspectives, think independently, and take an action. So the participants make investigation and analyze the local themes and take the matter as their own ones and come up with the solutions and disseminate to the society. One of the project's great strengths is that it goes beyond classroom learning. It brings together local communities, government, businesses, and schools. By connecting the creativity and energy of younger people with community initiatives and business activities, the project creates new ideas, new partnerships, and new opportunities for the collaboration. So in this way, it generates synergies that help address environmental issues. And looking ahead, we hope that graduates of the program will serve as the bridges between local communities and society, and through outreach and practical activities, they can inspire the next generation, raise environmental awareness across Hyogo Prefecture, and help build more sustainable communities. The pictures are the scenes of the group works, and also the visiting of the biogas facility at the ranches. The next page, please. And another important initiative is engaging younger people in discussions about the future direction of Hyogo Prefecture environmental policies. And As I introduced a moment ago, this initiative was also featured as a case study in the Asia-Pacific Synergy report. And we have the 6th Hyogo Prefecture Basic Environmental Plan. And in setting this plan, we held the Hyogo Environment Future Conference in 2024. The conference brought together future generations, mainly high school students, who will play a leading role in society in 2050 to help shape the plan. So the conference was held in 3 locations, Kobe, Himaji, and Fukuoka. Participants took part in the Future Design Workshop, where they imagined themselves as people living in the future and discussed today's policies from the perspective of future generations. They worked in groups on 3 themes: decarbonization, living in harmony with nature, and resource circulation, and exchanged ideas and what society should look like in 2050 and what action should be taken to achieve the vision. Discussions highlighted the importance of human resource development, raising public awareness, technological innovations. At the same time, participants emphasized close connections among decarbonization, nature positive development, and resource circulation, demonstrating the importance of addressing these issues. And we had the great help by the IGES, Kansai Research Center, and others. We take the opportunity to express our gratitude for your great support. And Hyogo Prefecture will continue to implement basic environmental plan while keeping in mind the main strategies that can be created across the environment, economy, and society. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much, Yunichi-san, for giving us some very concrete examples of how Hyogo Prefecture is taking the idea and concept of synergies and actively implementing it. I think some of the examples you provide are really inspiring, whether we're talking about the application of the CES approach and the use of woody biomass for productive purposes, or if we're talking about sustainable fashion, or of course we're talking about the engagement with youth. I think these are all really inspiring and the types of things that could potentially be replicated outside of Hyogo Prefecture as well. What I would like to do now is engage our panelists in discussion around a few key questions. And I'd like to turn it back to our colleague, Jang Ke-jun, over in Guangzhou. And I'm going to ask a question for him, but also it replies to Takada-san and Yunichi-san as well. And we've already touched upon this to some extent, but I think it would be good to put a slightly finer point on it. And the question really is about how we can concretely implement synergies on the ground. So I wonder if you could reflect on what is sort of the keys, or what do you see as the keys to concretely implementing synergies on the ground, and also what might be the ways that we can scale up synergies. So if you're already talking about concrete examples, what types of things do we need to spread the idea of synergies so that it's not just existing in one place? And I'd like to start with Jang Ke-jun. And you know, we've talked a lot about Japan, but maybe Jang Ke-jun, you can also talk about some of the cases that you have experienced in China or other parts of Asia. So over to you.
Yes, for me, I think maybe 2 parts I want to mention about. Firstly is the technology. How to make the clean technology really implemented. For example, so zero carbon electricity like solar PV wind. In many cases, in China, it's out in much lower cost than the fossil fuel power generation. So it's getting to be the no additional cost, no additional investment need. So this anyway will also happen in Nepal. And another case, very good case, Pakistan. They are using a lot of solar PV in Pakistan, but unfortunately, 80% of that is household owned, without any policy. They do by themselves. That means it's already getting super cheap. This case could be implemented. If we want to do more in Pakistan, maybe the policy could be more from the government, how to supply, how to provide a policy to support not only for distributed household use solar PV, but also nationwide solar PV power plant to support the national energy transition. Another very good case is just like what I mentioned about the electric car in Nepal. It's already cheaper than gasoline car. It's anywhere they are using anyway. So that's the reason why in 2025 the electric car penetration rate is so high. But their facilities, for example, charging station or charging facility need to be improved. And we will go there this weekend and talk with the local government. And of course, many technology come from China, but our purpose is not to let China only export technology. China should do technology transfer. Nepal can really make a local manufacturer for electric bike or even for the charging facilities. So one of the key topic in Nepal next week, we will talk about how to promote the economic development. This is a very good link with all the 17 SDGs, how to make that, because anyway, zero carbon electricity can really reduce their local air pollution and also can improve their lifestyle. And for example, this story also happened in Africa. If the people in poor area in Africa, they are using electric bike to replace normal bike. Every day they can make the trip for their good transport. Because many people in Africa, they are transport good by using bicycle. Originally, they only maybe twice a day. But now they are using electric bike, they can do 6 times per day. And also because their local electricity from solar PV is super cheap. So they can do this a lot and increase their income. So this case happened in many low-income countries. Let's do them together. Again, think about the China, Japan, and Korea, Singapore, the developed country, and developed country like China. We work together. We can make a better technology provider for different countries. Even though everybody knows China's manufacturer is very strong, but just like LED, all the LED IPs come from Japan. We need a lot of fundamental research program. And I believe Japan, Korea still take a lead in the world and also in China. Together with China's manufacturability, and I think we can make a very big change. This is another pattern we need to discuss more. What's the role of Japan and Korea can play? What the role of China can play? And in the coming future, India also can join the game for that one. The second point is how to make the short-term move. Technology, I just like what I mentioned about technology there. Some things can happen by market itself. For example, I mentioned about the solar PV in the household in Pakistan, electric car in Nepal. This is almost without any support from the government, just done by themselves. But now we have for ADB, we have for Japan, we have Korea, we have Japan, even for China, we have money to support them. So another way is how to design country by country. I'm not sure. Maybe next time let's work together like IGES and other research teams for the country base. What happened for Laos? What happened for Vietnam, Bangladesh, Nepal? What they need and how much we can help them. But we need very detail for their local condition. For example, sometimes the policy making is not so easy to deal with. Japan is a very good, typical country. The policy implementation, the government can help a lot. But in many low-income countries, it's not so easy. We need to figure out how to help them to work together. So this is in my mind. I think I remember even 10 years ago, we worked together with IGES. Think about 2-degree Asia, 1.5-degree Asia. Try to report prepare the report for 1.5-degree Asia. That's the report can go to country by country. So even for today, it's not late to do with that one because just like what I mentioned about fighting for 1.5 degree. So again, we have an opportunity to work together more with many countries in Asia by using the knowledge from IGES, also from NIST, many research institutes in Japan and Korea and also Singapore and China. So this is another opportunity for me to think about how to make a near-term action to implement many fundings from this synergy report for Asia. Okay, Eric, I will stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, John Kijun, for highlighting some examples from outside of Japan. I mean, I think this example of Pakistan and the solar energy and electric vehicles in Nepal demonstrate how you can contextualize the synergistic approach, and how in some cases, you didn't state this explicitly, but part of the whole motivation for, whether it be solar or electric vehicles is affordability, and it's cutting down on costs and making an economic argument for things that we used to think of as environmental interventions. I think that's on one of the powers of synergies. At the same time, I think one of your other key points is we might need to think a little bit more about nationally appropriate synergistic strategies, or some other acronym like that, but something that is taking the sort of national conditions and making it relevant for synergies. So we have a synergistic strategy that might be a little bit different for Bangladesh from the one that's used, for instance, in Korea, and the one that's used in Singapore. So that's another sort of approach. And then I think the last key thing that you really highlighted is the importance of technology and technology transfer. And so maybe as part of these sort of national synergistic strategies, how do we think about transferring key technologies? In the case of Japan, you mentioned, I think LEDs, for instance. And so I know Japan has been actively promoting the JCM. So how do we perhaps put synergies into the JCM as a way to promote technology transfer on synergistic technologies? Okay, with that, I'd like to then turn the same question over to Takada-san. And just once again, it's a question about how do we put synergies onto the ground and how do we scale them up? So over to you, Takada-san.
Eric, thank you so much. So, 私の方に3つです。
So I have two things to say. First one is that when we have the synergy, for whether it can make profit, so how much practical benefit we can enjoy has to be clarified. And I think it is the most important things. So we have to clarify what practical benefit we can have. It's not only for the private players, but everyone has to understand what practical benefit he or she can enjoy. And what is qualified? The second point is that the government has to take a role to share that benefit horizontally. So we have so those who are in the position, such as the local government or government, have to have the proper policies so that these approaches can be continued longer term. And beyond the boundary of the nation or the regions, we have to take the approach. And for that, a kind of consortium or association is needed. For example, RE100 or C40 for the cities. So the gathering of the persons with the same intention can create a big energy. And I think we can expect a kind of synergy from that, gathering of the people with the same mindset. And I think we can promote that kind of activities. That's all for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting the importance of, I think, especially this idea of gathering people with similar mindsets, and how, I mean, I think we've all been in rooms before when you have a sort of a good vibe between the different people, and the output of your collective efforts is much greater than the sort of if individuals were working alone. And I think that's also an important power of sort of this synergistic argument, to get the right people in the same room together and also make sure that they can work collectively to achieve something that's bigger and better. And it reminds me in some ways of what's happening already with some of the future leaders initiatives in Hyogo. So I think that's a nice transition over to Yonishi-san. So Yonishi-san, you've already raised several concrete cases from Hyogo, but I'll ask you, again, maybe to reflect a little bit upon some examples of how do we put synergies on the ground, but also maybe you can think a little bit too about how can Hyogo share what it's been doing with other prefectures or other parts of Japan that might encourage them to do the same or do something similar. Yonishi-san, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So first of all, in order to lead the specific actions at each site, first analysis of the specific issue is necessary. So based on the issue, we have to prepare the kind of small steps. So we have to break the steps into the kind of smaller ones so that it can be more executionable. So even if we understand what the issue is, in order to make people take actual steps, we have to make the steps more analyzed and smaller ones. And first of all, the executioners, so who take the actual steps, are needed on the local level and national level. And we also have to think about the next generation's executioners. And it is important to nurture the human resource in that way. And each activity should be expanded to the world. So we have the IGES and international organizations in Hyogo Prefecture. So the opportunities like this one we are having today will be very effective for the dissemination of information.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Onishi-san, for highlighting the importance of breaking this up into small steps. I think that's a really good piece of advice. Not every sort of synergistic approach needs to be grand at the beginning. I think we can start small and make gradual progress there. And then also, as you've mentioned a few times, but I really want to highlight here that, of course, IGES's headquarters is in Kanagawa, but we have an office here in Kansai, led by my colleague Kojima-san. And one of our jobs here is to take and show the good practices that we're experiencing on the ground and then amplify them. And so we look forward to working with you to try to upscale some of these things. That question wasn't meant for necessarily you to do it all by yourself, but it's to do it collectively together. So thank you so much for that answer. So then I'd like to now turn the discussion a little bit over to the future. And we've already talked a little bit about what will happen with this report since it's been published. But my next question is really about how can synergies potentially be integrated into the next global framework or possible post-2030 SDGs. And I recognize that we're almost out of time here, so I'm going to give everybody about 30 seconds to reflect on this one. Thanks very much for reminding me there. So 30 seconds to reflect. What can synergies mean for the future SDGs or the future of Hyogo Prefecture? And 30 seconds to Jun Kijun.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Yes, just like what I mentioned about, yes, we need to think about our beautiful world. I think I heard that IGES colleagues working on join the next SDG design. But for me, we do need an implementation plan after this report. Let's work together country by country. Then we understand not only SDG for all Asia, but SDG for each country. How to figure out their challenge, difficulty, then we can help them.
All right, over to Takada-san.
Next year in the UN, we are going to have General Assembly in September. And 2030 onwards, after SDGs, what will happen as the discussion will start. 2027 September to 2030, all the member states will think about what will come after SDGs. So if we need ideas, when we need good ideas need to be brewed right now, collected right now, and at a good timing, need to submit them. That is the most important thing. And we have a great momentum. Now we have 193 signatory states. And if they go into negotiations, we cannot take up everything from all the countries. Japan is a leader country of SDGs. So here, taking this chance, I hope you disseminate everything to the world. Here we have IGES as well as the Ministry of the Environment. So here now is very important.
Yoneshi-san, maybe you don't have to talk specifically about the global framework, but just about what will Hyogo Prefecture focus on in 2030 and beyond. And do you have maybe a minute or so? Gomennasai.
Yes. Japan, Hyogo-ken, we have 2030 Environment of Act, and we have put together a lot of plans. And what's put in the focus is the well-being of prefectural residents is the fundamental principle. I believe that in the post-2030 era, the next major challenge will be not only achieving the SDG, but how to achieve the conceptualized well-being beyond that.
It's an excellent way to close the panel. I think one of the things we'll be thinking a lot more about as we move to the post-2030 era is this idea of well-being and how to make that even more concrete. And I think that concept of synergies goes nicely hand in hand with the concept of well-being. And I think one of the things we've done today is help all of us in this room think clearly about what that connection might look like. What does it mean to be a better person, to live a better life in post-2030, and how do we connect that to the global agenda? So with that, I would like to close the session and also congratulate all of our panelists and send my appreciation to colleagues who helped to organize this session. Thank you so much.